Passion, purpose, possibilities. They're all right there. But sometimes we need a little push. And that's where SheSez comes in. Think of it as a master class taught by the world's most interesting women, sharing stories and ideas, because girlfriends help each other. This is SheSez with Linda Grasso. Hello and welcome to SheSez. Our guest today is JJ Levenstein. As a pediatrician in the San Fernando Valley section of Los Angeles, JJ has taken care of children for decades. She was so beloved by her patients that, in fact, at one time, there was a wait list to see her. So it was a surprise to just about everybody in the community when in 2012, at the age of 55, JJ announced she was retiring. Turns out she was after a lifestyle change, and she was having dreams of becoming a professional chef. JJ, thank you for being here with us today.
It's lovely to be here, Linda. Thank you.
So let me get this right. You go through medical school, you finally have your own thriving practice, and you decide on change.
I did. I mean, it came for a number of reasons. I think the most compelling reason, actually, is that my mother, my own mom, at 59, developed early onset Alzheimer's. And she literally had delayed her retirement to help me through medical school and through my education. And she never had an in-between from retirement until dementia. It literally was a period of about 6 months. So I took care of her for a long time. I still do. She's still with us. But I had an epiphany at that point that life was too short if I was next, because that was an unknown. I wanted to give myself an in-between. I wanted to give my family an in-between, and I wanted to take better care of myself than I was in a busy practice, because it's all consuming. And so that was one of the impetuses for change. I also felt I was getting further and further away from being connected to my family. A good example of this is a neighborhood Christmas party where I showed up and my husband knew everybody and their dogs and what they ate and where they traveled, and I knew no one. So my presence in my own life was pretty diminished, and my presence in my patient's life was always there. So it was a real wake-up moment to say, I have an opportunity here to really make a change before it's too late.
So did you fight it, or did you start embracing it right away? Because that was a big change.
I embraced it. I think because my son, Max, fortunately had graduated from college and had a job, so he was gainfully employed. I was the primary breadwinner in our household. My husband stayed home and I went to work every day. And we had an opportunity, since he had finished college and had a job, and we had saved diligently over the years, and we lived pretty modestly, that we could do it. We could actually do it. So I was 55, he was 60, and we took a look at each other and we said, we need to get each other back. We need to get so much back.
So he embraced it right away.
He did. Totally. And because we were wise in our saving and everything else, we didn't live high on the hog. And so for us, we knew we had the means to continue. It was just the drive to do that, because we knew it was going to take a lot of retooling of our relationship, and me re-entering the house like the Wicked Witch of the West, in his domain. That was a challenge. And so, but we, we had the mutual goal of really being present together, and me restoring my role as Mrs. Levenstein instead of Dr. Levenstein, and him, going from Mr. Dr. JJ to Bruce. It was a big transition and a big need on his part, and one that I enjoyed too.
I'm hearing everything you're saying, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, but God, she just probably had paid off her loans for medical school.
I had done it quite a few years ago. and actually, I managed my practice really well, because I had been in a practice prior to that and learned a lot of on-the-job training lessons. And I had a very wonderful office manager who helped me really keep the finances of my practice and everything in such good order that there was plenty for everyone when I retired. And that's very unusual for doctors in general and pediatricians specifically, because we're the nice guys. We give away the farm. And I gave away a bit of the farm, but I saved some of the farm for myself.
So what was the first thing you did? You're thinking about becoming a chef, and back up even further than that. Let's talk about why you wanted to cook. I mean, I'm imagining as you're a mom to a son, and your husband had done a lot of the, as you said, he was like Mr. Mom for a while. Could you cook?
I could cook, he could clean, and nary the two crossed over. So literally we had a deal when we got married that I would cook every night, or we would order out. I just didn't like the idea of ordering out. But Trader Joe's saved my life. I would elevate it almost every night during the week when I came home from work. And I would cook on the weekends, and I tried to be as diligent as I could. But my son had his fair share of Kraft mac and cheese, I have to say.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, he really did. But I actually came from a household where my mom was a single mother. My grandmother moved in to help us out. My mother was a lousy cook, and my grandmother was a Nebraska country cook. And all I remember is white gravy and fried chicken and nothing that really tasted particularly good. And when I went to college and I started going to dinner at my friends' houses and their mothers would cook, and oh my God, what a revelation. Like, this is what food's supposed to taste like? Not everything is white and full of mayonnaise. I mean, literally, that's what my early eating was. So I call myself a reformed picky eater. And so as I started to eat at more restaurants, I grew up in San Francisco. So as I started to eat at more restaurants and taste more things, it's like, oh, this is good. Now, medicine, food. And it was always in me to be a doctor. So I said, okay, I can always cook, but I can't always have the chance to be a doctor. So being a doctor came first. And then on my bucket list, the first thing I did was enroll for a 6-month intensive culinary course right after I retired. Because I knew I had to get out of the house a couple hours a day, because I would have driven my husband like out the door into the next town.
What was that experience like for you?
It was great. It was intense, but nothing comes close to being at LA County General Hospital in the middle of a riot in the city. So really, when others in my class would view the work as intensely hard or competitive, I mean, for me, it was just a personal challenge, and it was really enjoyable because it filled in the gaps of all the classes that I had taken before. And it joined all the philosophies together, and it gave me more technique and more bravery to eat the things that I hadn't eaten prior to that. So I ate my first Brussels sprouts. I ate my first oysters, believe it or not, cauliflower, asparagus, all these things that I lived in fear of, I had to embrace in school. So it kind of became another kind of epiphany for me. It got me over a fear hurdle that was deep-seated from my youth. I mean, it was a 55-year-old fear hurdle.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because you've been in LA for a while, and you've been in San Francisco, and these are two culinary capitals
and
where
you'd
food
think,
experimentation is part of life.
Yeah, and you'd think I just would have embraced it wholeheartedly, and I didn't. It was like my dirty little secret. And so since school, what's been...
dirty little secret.
Well, in a way, because it's like I preach the choir in the office, and it's like, try this and that and make this and that. And in the meantime, I'm not eating those things myself. So I wanted to be very transparent about, what I was capable of doing, and I wanted to push myself. And that was a personal, internal thing I wanted to push in the right direction. And I did. And it was fun. And I had kind of a crazy chef for a teacher. And so that was another hurdle. So getting through that sort of emotional experience. But it's made me so fearless in more realms than just cooking, I have to say.
Really? Like what?
Anything.
You just feel like you can do anything.
Well, I think
and
so. I think, and
anyway.
as long as I have a safety strap, I mean, I'm afraid of heights, but I finally went off to a women's Camp Powerment, and you've interviewed Tammy
Leader
and I finally got on a zip line, and so that was, I don't think I would have done that had I not gone to culinary school. It's just reflecting back on, okay, I've been through med school, I've been through childbirth, I've raised a household, I've gone to culinary school with a kind of crazy chef. I can do this. And so it's this cumulative inspiration of looking back at really honoring what you've done, even though it looks silly to the outside world. For me, it was very important.
Yeah, probably when you were a doctor, you were like everyone else with a huge career. You're just trying to get through the day. I mean, you're just going and going, adrenaline rushing and experimenting. Those things probably didn't even come to play in that part of your life.
Yeah, they didn't. There wasn't enough time because, I mean, literally my focus from the moment I woke up in the morning till I dragged myself home at night was what my patients needed. And I took care of some very, very complicated kids, some kids that other doctors would actually refuse to care for because they just thought it was too much of a time suck for them. And so for me, I had several dozen families that were very, very dependent on, constant contact with me and coordinating care and being sort of at the hub of their care team and being their advocate. And so it does a lot to take time away from you, and it's time outside of work and on the weekends and thinking about things and writing letters. And so there's just no time to do personal introspection at that point. It's like we were in survival mode, both my husband and I.
So after you do your culinary school, you graduate, and the first thing that interested you was making gourmet ice cream.
It was, I mean, look at this, right? I love to eat.
Well, I had some of it, and I have to say it was pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you. What actually got me started is that a client of mine has a restaurant in Toluca Lake, and his wife one night asked me, would you be interested in making custom ice cream for our restaurant? I was like, sure. Never done that before, but sure. What do you want to do? Well, work with our pastry chef, and you figure something out. So I literally just started like by the seat of my pants making samples for her until we arrived at something that was so magical. And that sort of started the ball rolling. And then another flavor came. And then I had the opportunity for about a year to actually to sell them retail in a small culinary outlet in Sherman Oaks. And that came to a close last year because of local regulations or whatever. But it was really fun. Again, it's sort of like, hand me a canvas and some paints. I've never painted before or significantly, but let's see what we can do. And I found there was this intuition of, again, confidence in, let me put these flavors together. Let me try these combinations. I didn't read this in a book. I just think it's going to work based on my skill and experience. And it did. So again, it's looking back and saying, you know what, I can do this. This is not intimidating to me. It's just ice cream.
And now you're doing vegan soups.
Doing soups, yeah. So I had to sort of find a substitution for our community. And honestly, with my brand called Kid Doc, it made a lot more sense actually to make soup than ice cream.
Now, tell me about your brand, Kid Doc.
That's my license plate. And so I thought, you know what, this is a great idea for a brand because it tells people exactly who I am. And from a point of view of someone who can give you flavor with good health attached to it. Most of my soups that I make are vegan. Some have meat in them. All the stocks are made from scratch, and the last ingredient is salt. And so I really try to be very cognizant of fresh ingredients and things I can get from the farmer's market and what's affordable. And I make soups that can be bought from the freezer and serve one or two, depending on how hungry you are.
I'll tell you, I can't think of a greater challenge than making a vegan soup because so much of soup making comes down to making the stock, which is used with animal bones. I mean, chicken bones or, beef bones. Yeah. And then how do you get that same really rich flavor with just vegetables? Okay,
so there's a joke in my house. My future daughter-in-law looks in my freezer and she sees all these bags of stuff. And she's, what's in there? And I said, scraps. I feel like a Depression era doctor, but in fact, I save all my vegetable scraps, onion skins, carrot tops, anything but the cruciferous vegetables. And so I was able to make a vegetable stock based on just what others would compost or throw away, plus some onions and other things. But now my stock is really very simple. It's 5 ingredients. And so the first thing I do is cook a ton of mushrooms and get them really, really reduced down and get a lot of umami and what's called fond, which is the brown leftovers, little bits at the bottom of the pan. And then I add my onions and get them sweet and caramelized. Then I put celery and carrots and garlic and sometimes a little potato. And again, whatever scraps I have and fennel. And so, and then I just let it simmer for hours, sometimes overnight, and then skim it. And I've got this extremely tasty stock. And it's unsalted so that depending on which soup I make, I can adjust the flavor level based on the soup. And I even make vegetarian matzo ball soup with that. And it's full of herbs and lemon, and it's just absolutely delicious.
I need to take one of your cooking classes.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching one in January about soups and salads.
I actually would really like to take it because I just would find that really challenging, to try to create that flavor. And my son recently announced he's vegan, which has really thrown a loop into my cooking repertoire because my husband's more of a meat eater, and I just find it hard. I mean, I got the vegan cheese, and I tried to make him the pizza. That was horrible, and it's really, it's been a challenge to change.
And I think, it's interesting because a lot of folks don't know that there's a difference between vegan and plant-based diets. And so I like to think of what I make as actually more plant-based because I try to avoid a lot of coconut fat just because it's not so heart healthy in excess. And I do like to not necessarily watch the calories crazily, but I do like to put healthy ingredients in that aren't calorically hugely dense. So if somebody's trying to lose weight, or reduce their insulin needs, or try to manage their high blood pressure or heart disease, that I'm more plant-based, and so more olive oil-based and healthy oil-based versus coconut oil and a lot of the sugars and things that vegans love to throw in.
I think it's really cool how you've sort of incorporated being a doctor into your cuisine.
Well, it's a new kind of prescription, right?
It is.
Yeah, so at the bottom of my little label, it says, treat yourself, doctor's orders. And I mean, treating yourself to something doesn't necessarily mean it has to be sweet. It means just treating yourself to something that makes you feel good, that prolongs your life, that helps your health, and that tastes damn good. And my stuff tastes really good.
How do you sell it? I mean, how do you make money from it? Do you sell it out of the Boulevard Kitchen?
I sell it out of the
Sherman
Boulevard
Oaks?
Kitchen in Sherman Oaks, and so we have a freezer in the front that's just dedicated to the things that I make, and we sample it at our events. Sometimes we'll have it live on the stove, so if somebody comes in and wants a cup of soup, sometimes mine will be up there. But it's interesting because I have such a big reach in the San Fernando Valley and have so many clients that I still see on a regular basis, usually in a spin class or in the mall or in the movies or wherever.
I get it, JJ.
I get the word.
I was actually on your wait list to see you when I had my son in 1998.
Sorry.
My neighbor, Robin, I told you about it. I had you, and she said, you have to get her. And I tried. And I was like, oh, no, she's not taking new patients and hasn't for a while.
Well,
you'd go on and off. And then at another point you were, and I couldn't, I already had a pediatrician.
But I really sort of hearkening back to that, it's about quality control. And so whether you're talking about ingredients in soup or whether you're talking about, how to run a medical practice, I know lots of people who see 40, 50 kids a day because they like that big check, every 2 weeks. For me, if I can't remember someone's name by the end of the day, or what antibiotic I prescribed for them, or what plan of action we had mutually agreed to attack, that was when I knew it was getting too busy. And so many times, actually, probably once a year, I would shut down my practice for at least a month or two and sort of play catch up. And I also told my patients, who I had great relationships with too, tell me when I'm losing my it factor.
And they actually did, didn't they, at one point?
They really did. And actually, as I got closer to retirement too, they're like, you're getting tired. It looks like you're really running yourself into the ground. We're worried about you. We only want what's best for you. And so I got a lot of support when I had decided to retire. I mean, some people push back, obviously, but for the most part, I think what I poured into people's lives of myself, they poured back to me and, let me go. And what's so incredibly wonderful now is that I'm very present in my community in daytime hours, and I'm not a vampire anymore. And so I'm really enjoying now seeing my parents in my practice, my kids in my practice. They're growing up. Some of them are having babies. And that legacy of trust still is there. I mean, I get emails or a call or something almost every day. Dr. JJ, can you help me with this? Or can you point me in the right direction? And so, once a doctor, always a doctor. And I just, it's a really pleasurable time in my life right now because it's just there's so many dimensions to what's going on.
We should also point out that one of the things you vowed to do in addition to becoming a professional chef was to improve your lifestyle so that you felt healthier. Yeah. You were feeling tired and run down.
Yeah, when you drink Diet Coke and red licorice every day for lunch, because that's the breakfast of champions, lunch of champions. I mean, it was so insane how, you couldn't park yourself for a lunch very often, or a good meal, or a good night's sleep. And so my friend Susan, who had retired 5 years before me, she was an executive at Sony. About a week after I retired and got back from a little vacation with my husband, she basically said, I'm walking you into the spin class and let's see what it's like. And we walked in and I said, where do I buy shoes? I mean, I literally for the first time in my life had found something that I loved. And then I'm listening to music. Linda, this is so funny. I'm listening to music in the class. It's probably 6, 7, 8 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, this song is so cool. When did it just come out? So this is how far we moved.
No pop culture for you when you were a doctor, right?
I was just so behind everything. So this class, one of the classes I take, I'm the youngest of all the old people because there's a lot of people in their 70s in there who are emeritus professors or retired or whatever. So I'm the youngin' in that class. And then the other class that I like to take, I'm the oldest of the young people. And so I get to sort of sample the whole society there. And that's my daily support system. I literally go every day. I went this morning, if I can. And so I feel healthier and more vital and more energized now than I ever have, because I finally, I don't know, I'm finally getting enough sleep. I'm eating decently and I'm exercising regularly, and I just feel like my juices are flowing again.
Yeah, you're creative. You have some creative energy.
Well, there's room. There's room, because this was stuffed with so much that there just wasn't room for anything.
JJ, what was it about you that you were able to move on and sort of embrace the change and make the pivot? Because so many of us get stuck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you weren't in an easy situation. It wasn't like you could just, I mean, you were a doctor. You had a practice. That was huge for you.
You know, I think I was really internally always monitoring myself for saying, when you feel yourself really not liking this, or just it's not as joyful as it used to be, you need to do like a self-check. I just always had that inside of me, like this little bee buzzing in there. And I think part of it was probably driven by the fact that my mom had already been through several years of Alzheimer's care. And so I think I always had that sort of on the back of my brain. And then I had a few key patients who I basically said, look, if I get really snarky, because I had old associates who were really snarky and nobody liked to talk to them at night on the phone or anything. And I said, if I start to get like that, or if I get edgy, or if you just feel like something, it's my time, you need to tell me. And so I had a key about 10 families that I really relied on for that kind of feedback. And my own husband too. You know, he's just like, this is just, it's exhausting for both sides. It really is.
Speaking of your husband, what has this been like for your relationship? Because you said at one point, I wanted to work on us more.
Yeah.
You know, you wanted to cultivate more of a real relationship with him. What has it been like?
The first couple of years were really interesting. I think we were going on rote memory for a while. You know, it's like when you have a kid in your house, you know, you do everything and it's all about your kid and college and whatever. And so you're kind of on automatic pilot. And then suddenly it's the two of you in a very empty nest and stare at each other every day. And I'm intruding on his territory. And so I had to own and be more sensitive about the impact of what my huge presence in my community did to him.
Because it wasn't just about you; it was about him.
It was
too.
about him, but he was so exhausted by everything that we never really confronted that issue. I mean, I guess it would be like you keeping your maiden name and then somebody calling your husband by your name rather than theirs. So I think he had lost a sense of himself. I had lost a sense of myself as wife. And so we had to go through some pretty hard shit, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, at the very beginning, I think we both looked at each other, and I said, "Look, I'm not leaving, no matter how hard this is." And I think once we really realized that we were in it for the long term, because we'd been through so much, and so much of it was good, that we just had to sort of work through and communicate better and more regularly, and not bottle up stuff. And once we got through that, which took us a couple of years, and we didn't need a therapist or anything. We actually just kind of soldiered through ourselves. Yeah. We've been good. I mean, I got my husband back. I think he got me back. And we're working side by side doing things, whether it's pouring concrete or gardening or traveling or helping plan our son's wedding. I mean, we're just really trying to unify ourselves several hours a day, but then we also split off and have our own time too.
I think it's just such an interesting topic to touch on, because often when you ruffle the feathers in a relationship, you roll change, or you decide to stay home and, you know, you're ruffling the feathers, you're making change. It can create a lot of, you know, discourse and anxiety, or, you know, people are unhappy with, you know, some of the moms I know want to go back to work, and the husband's like, well, who's going to get this, and who's going to do this, and who's going to be there for me and doing my errands, and they need that.
Yeah.
Or they want to take on another project. Like when I said I wanted to take on SheSez, that impacted my marriage, because after I finished my regular job of being a magazine editor, then I'd start doing that.
Right.
And that's our time.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, there's a shift. It affects everybody in the family. I don't have as much time to do errands for everybody on Saturdays and Sundays. But the net impact of it is that it's good, because when I'm doing what I want to do and I'm fulfilled, as many of, you know, we women are, it's better for the relationship.
No, I would fully agree. And I think the research actually shows, you know, with working mothers, because I had so many in my practice, that a more fulfilled personally educated person, even if you have lesser hours with your kid, is going to be a better mother than someone who is at home saying, what if, what if, what if? So what my husband knows about me is that I don't sit around eating bonbons and watching soap operas every day. I still like to work, but now I'm working on my terms and I'm still building my intellectual hat. So I have myself out there doing medical things, but it's not direct practice, but it's public education and enjoying the cooking and touching my community and staying connected with them and being outside of the house several hours a day. So he's got his time. And we're now in a rhythm that makes sense for both of us, because when we come back home, we're just super happy and have a great time together. And we've rebalanced the whole thing.
I think one of the things is you're in control now. When you were running a thriving pediatrics practice,
my patients were in
you
control.
were at the whim of this kid's
Everything.
sick, coming in, I need this prescription now. It's not at Costco, blah, blah, blah. You're doing all this, and you're doing a lot of admin. You're doing a lot of paper pushing and all that. But you're in control now. And we should point out, you're still crazy busy. You are a contributor, a correspondent on the Home and Family Show on the Hallmark Channel. You are Dr. JJ, right? That's what you go by there. So you're giving medical advice and
doing that. And I have actually been working with America's peanut farmers for the last 9 years. Initially, I was a consultant during the salmonella crisis, and they wanted to know where parents were reading their material. And now my job with them has evolved over the last several years, with food allergies being a primary focus in America. I now lead a national food allergy awareness committee composed of doctors and restaurateurs and lawyers and food safety advocates and school nurses and nutritionists and chefs. And basically, we've helped fund some of this pivotal research that has shown that early introduction of at least peanuts in children reduces food allergy risk or peanut allergy risk by 85%. And so now I go to 7 or 8 medical meetings a year, do FaceTime with all primary healthcare practitioners, and use this great science to help change our whole feeding paradigm in the United States. So yeah, I have a lot of hats on this big old head, but I love wearing them because it still keeps everything alive there. And I guess I'm just really trying to fight the notion that I would be next with dementia. And that's at the end of every day, when I forget something, it scares the crap.
So I want to talk about that, because a lot of us have, my mother-in-law passed away from Alzheimer's. And I know that the hereditary component in that, my husband, his 5 sisters, they're all really concerned about getting it. What are you doing proactively?
So proactively, I think the first thing I did when I retired was convert my life insurance to long-term care insurance, because what I've seen with my mother, we had to sell our house in San Francisco. She's been under care for 30 years. We're running out of money in a month or two. Her care has been increasingly more and more expensive and out of pocket. And, our Social Security helps a little bit, or pension helps a little bit, but we're going to have to start filling in the rest. And I'd never want to do that to my son, ever, or to my husband if he survives me and I'm the one, or if he's the one. So that's the first thing. Second thing was to change my lifestyle. So I retired. I'm getting sleep. I'm exercising. I'm eating well.
What about omegas? Are you taking?
I eat a lot of fish. So we eat salmon several times a week, and I take my vitamins when I can remember them, but I take my statins, which is probably more important for me prolonging my life at this point. And, I walk, I breathe, I don't smoke. I try to, lead as healthy a lifestyle as I can, but I'm human. I like my glass of wine. So I choose red when I remember.
Red over white.
Yeah, red over white, although I'm, a Chardonnay girl, but
me
red
too.
is,
Red gives me insomnia.
Yeah, red's hard because, it's got a lot of other things in it that, may stir up allergies and stuff like that. But 1 glass of red wine per woman, 2 for men, which really makes me mad. Like, why do they get 2 when we get 1? But, just really trying.
And we've got to have the babies.
Yeah. But just trying to stay on top of creating enough time for me to listen to myself to make sure I'm feeling good. And we have been blessed, thank God, with tremendous health between my husband and I and my son. So, knock on wood, so far so good. And in as far as the in-between, it's been 5.5 years. It's been a hell of an in-between. It's been really amazing. So even if it all shut down tomorrow, I would have absolutely No regrets.
So you were 55 when you kicked off your new life.
Mm-hmm.
You just said it had been 5 years. I try not to get to pinpointing people's ages because I
I'm
know
61.
women
I don't
hate
care.
that. I know. I never. I'm like, can I say? I don't know.
I don't
Sometimes
dye
it's
my hair anymore. I'm just like embracing
but
it.
it's relevant with you because at 61, you're modeling blue jeans. Tell us. I'm sorry. I have to mention that. You mentioned it on the way in.
Oh my God.
Tell us
Okay.
about it.
So bucket lists are fun, and a lot of people just put their bucket list in the crease of their sofa because it just doesn't seem to be a priority. But for me, at this point, I have no other choice but to have fun. And that's what I choose to do every day. So on a whim, a few months ago, I get these jeans. They're called Not Your Daughter's Jeans, NYDJ, whatever. I get a little online thing and it says, oh, we're shooting a national ad campaign for spring. Why don't you write, the hardest thing you ever did? And so I was talking about my mom's care, basically, and trying to balance that with raising a family and caring for a practice. And I got a call a couple of weeks ago. Are you available on Saturday? Can you come there? We're flying in 10 women from all over the country. Would you like to be in this ad campaign? And I swear to God, it was the most fun thing because every woman who was there was so diverse, shapes, sizes, ages. I was the oldest. I was the only one with really gray hair. And honestly, check that off the bucket list. It was the most spectacular experience. So in spring, if you see NYDJ, like billboards, print ads, email, online, whatever, social media, I'll be in there just laughing my ass off. It was
I can't
great.
wait. I can't wait.
So much fun.
How
so much
fun.
Yeah.
JJ, what should women take away from your story? What can we learn from what you've gone through with your reinvention?
Keep your bucket list long and keep checking things off. If an opportunity shows up, even it seems like a remote possibility, try because you never know. You put your hook out and you might get a bite. So, I would say be broad as far as your bucket list. Second of all, remember to laugh every day because the alternative is crying or dying. And so honestly, if you can wake up every day and decide to be happy as opposed to deciding to be bitchy, miserable, or just Debbie Downer, decide to be happy that day, make a difference that makes somebody laugh, that makes somebody smile, especially you. And I think take care of yourself. Really, if you have a window of opportunity, even if it's learning mindful meditation, even if it's stretching in your bed before you get out in the morning, just doing something where you can actually hear yourself breathe, feel your heartbeat, feel like you're alive, and then probably get rid of the diet soda and, start drinking water. Just one little change, one baby step at a time. I gave up Diet Coke 2.5 years ago, and I've not had a relapse, and it was probably one of the best things I did. I was just like, okay, let me just do one little thing out there. Let me just get rid of one little thing. And so, you move yourself ahead doing that.
JJ, I've loved having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Linda.
I find you so inspiring, and I'm going to keep watching you and trying to learn from you.
Thanks so much, Linda.
And thank you for joining us. We so appreciate the support. You guys are giving us feedback. We lap up every single word. We're shouting out in the canyon, and you're hearing us, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again.